Hi there, it's Darren from SimNation. Want to do a quick video on the free agency period within Draft Day Sports Pro Football 2023 in the context of WWPF. Of course, Draft Day Sports Pro Football is a Wolverine Studios title. I highly recommend that you taking a look at it. It's a great game, and if you're looking for an online league, I would humbly suggest WWPF. We have a lot of good coaches. We have some active contributors to just things in general with helping people understand the game and so on. So free agency within this game is right after staff signing, and it is a 10-week period. So the first 5 weeks happen before the draft. The last 5 weeks happen after the draft. For me, the first 5 week period is really going after the people you really want to get heading into the draft, so that way you know what you're getting in the draft. Versus the final 5 weeks is really honing that roster, getting the holes that you have, and so on, and also grabbing anybody who falls out after the draft because some players may have been cut due to salary cap or cut just because someone drafted someone better. Or it's also the opportunity to get the players who didn't get drafted. And every year there are some really good ones that fall through the cracks. Um, there are a lot of different approaches to free agency. I don't think one is better than any of the others. You have uh, some of them, like myself, will I use free agency to bring in younger players and to kind of focus on establishing a base and then using the draft to bring in additional players and then bringing in an occasional veteran who I can use to hone in the approach of my team. So I match it kind of to the style I play and also to the systems I use. I say young, to me, young is anyone under the age of 30, traditionally 25, 26, if not younger than that, like 22 through 24. And I try to sign them to long-term deals so that way I can keep them around for a while and I know exactly what I'm operating against. So Pittsburgh tends to be right around the cap every season. There are other teams who use free agency to flush the system, and they've gotten really good at it. Templar at Dallas is a good example of this, where every year it seems like he has 40 to 50 million in cap space free, and he uses it very effectively to bring in new talent and reload for a playoff run, trying to ultimately get to the championship. Probably no better at it than anyone is Peter. Peter normally has roughly 30 to 50 million in cap space on any given season. I think he has like 45 this season. Um, but what Peter does is he drafts very well. He builds a base through the draft, and then he brings in some younger players through free agency, but he really focuses more on veteran players over the age of 30. And he's done a phenomenal job of being able to use free agency to bring those players in to reload, because let's be honest, no team has been more successful in the last 15 seasons than Peter in his Oakland Raiders. And then you have others who had a crappy season and it's time to hit the reset button, and they either cut or let go of a whole bunch of players on the team, and they have upwards of 70 million in cap space, and they're just going to retool the whole team for a championship run. This happens in real life, by the way, because if you have a lot of spending power, you can get out there and get a whole bunch of really good players and take a team that maybe had 4 or 5 losses and turn them into a team that wins 9 or 10 games. So some of the teams that may be looking at that this year would be like potentially the Giants, the Browns. I think the Ravens have a lot of cap space, but they fall more into the I just need to get over the hump and into the playoffs, because I think that Kevin's done a good job of keeping some of his talent and letting go of the talent that he thinks he could improve on. So there's a whole variety of approaches. So we are in free agency now. So one of the things I want to talk about is contracts. And also how I look at free agency. So you would hit advance, go in, and there should be really no free agent report because we're in the first week of free agency. None of that matters because I'm not logged in as commish. But now you can see the people. You can also see your highest paid person, how much cap room you have, your total team salary, and so forth. By the way, the cap is at 208,000, so I have roughly about 12.5 to play unless I start cutting some people, which I'm not going to do. Um, let's just choose somebody, and I'm going to pick on Phil Sullivan because I intend to actually go after him. Now, I'm not going to show you what I'm going to offer, but I'm going to give you some insight into how I think at this. So I need a speed wide receiver. To me, speed is anything above 90. I want someone who has great hands and good agility. Phil Sullivan fits that bill. He's 26 years old. He's got his whole career ahead of him. He's got decent personality. I don't like his endurance that much, but I rotate my wide receiver, so that's not a big deal. When I look at the personality and I'm thinking about the bid, I don't need to I don't need to woo him with money. He's just doesn't really give a crap about money. This is slightly skewed, by the way. No, it's right. So he just doesn't care about money. He doesn't care about security. He cares about loyalty. So I don't cut a lot of people, so I'm good there. My coaching staff has been the same it's been for a while. Winning, I have a good shot at him because I'm coming off a championship season. Plus, over the last few seasons, the only team better really than me has been the Oakland Raiders. Maybe the Jets in the long run aggregate in New England, but I've got a good chance at this guy based on winning. Playing time, I can offer that. But playing time, I'll show you how that manifests. Close to home, uh, he's from Oklahoma. That's not going to really play for me. Market size, I'm happy he doesn't care about market size because Pittsburgh's not a big market uh, team. And I'll also show you in a minute how to look at some of that. So when I think about offering this dude a contract, and let's just go to bid. So what you do is you click on Hill, you go to offer contract. This gives you a good idea. So I do not have a lot of money locked up in my wide receiver core, which is good. Sturgeon is a really good talent. He's the only guy I've got where I'm spending a lot of money. So he's going to tell me he wants 19 million. I'm not going to offer him 19 million. He's potentially worth it, but not in my eyes. I don't really think anybody's worth 19 million. But so what I'm going to do is I am going to take out one too many zeros there. So I'm going to offer him somewhere between 3 to 6 million. So let's just go on the bottom side. I'll say 3 million. I know he doesn't care about money, but he does care about loyalty. So I'm going to offer him a 4-year deal. And now I'm going to layer on some incentives to him. So receiving touchdowns, I'll say, uh, let's be nice. We'll give him, if he gets one, he gets 5%. Receiving touchdowns, we'll say if he gets 5, I'll give him 10%. Receiving touchdowns, if he gets 10, I'll give him 15. And then if he gets 20, then I'll give him 20. So I'm going to layer this in. I'm not going to go through this ad nauseum. I'll do the same thing for catches. There's sometimes I just simply say, if you get one catch, I'll give you 5%. And I'll do this across a bunch of these categories that are relevant. I'll talk in a minute about something that you can't do in this league because I will stop it. But if you notice, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He can make 25% in essentially bonuses, which will get added onto his salary. So what that now means is what he's considering is if he hits his bonuses, and let's just say I didn't do these 3 here, and I just did this, that means that roughly he's going to get 900,000 in bonuses if he hits it. So that would get added to the 3.9. So he's really looking at 4.8 million over 4 years. But every season, the next season, he can actually get more money because his salary will adjust to 4.8 if he hits his bonuses. And then he'll be able to go against the 4.8 the following season. So if he's thinking about this, this may actually help incent him to come over. And again, he doesn't really care about money. He cares about winning. I just need to be in the ballpark. I may actually give him 4 or 5. I haven't decided yet, but I am going to layer in these bonuses. So I'm going to cancel this real quick because what I do want to talk about is the exploit. So come on. Sorry, it's just taking a second. I do want to talk about a way that people exploit. If I see you do this in this league, I'm going to release the player, and there won't even be a question asked. So there's a lot of people who do this whole drill of they offer like 1 million, and then they go, okay, I'm going to give him passing touchdowns, 1, passing touchdowns, do it again, and do 10%, passing touchdowns, do it again, do 15%, passing touchdowns, 20%. Now, if you're a rational person, you're immediately asking a question, how the hell is a wide receiver ever going to get a passing touchdown? There aren't any plays in the playbook that allow it. He would have to play at quarterback, and you're not going to play a wide receiver at quarterback. This dude's got no arm. And then what they'll do is they'll go in and do something like completion percentage, and they'll do the exact same thing. Then they'll go to tackles and do the exact same thing. What they're doing is they're tripping the engine. So the engine will look at this and say at 1.9 with all these incentives, and you can have like maybe 10 or 15 of them, right? It actually equates to 10 million, and it will give the player will, especially if they're a greedy player, will look at that and go, I can make a shit ton of money from Pittsburgh because they're offering me a lot of incentives, and they'll sign, but they'll never have a chance of getting a single one of those bonuses. That, my friends, is an exploit. If I see you do it in this league, I will release the player, warn you the second time. I will release the player again, and I will pull a third round pick from you. And then the third time, I will simply just release you from the league. So it's not, there's no room for it in this game. Don't do it. It's an exploit. And I've had someone actually try to defend that to me, and that's not the way that this was meant to be used. Now, again, yeah, could they put safeguards in? Absolutely, but they didn't. So don't exploit. But I think the key here is you need to understand this is important when we talk about playing time. So if he cares about playing time, you want to make sure he's a key player or a starter. Maybe he can go as low as rotational player, but don't put him as a backup prospect not needed, because if they care about playing time, they're just not going to come over no matter what. And then, of course, you submit the offer, and throughout the season, you'll watch, he'll click on them again. You'll see where you stand. Are you the top team or not the top team? Now, if they don't care about money, you're showing as someone is offering a lot more money, it's up to you whether you stay on them with your approach or not. I've actually done that, and people are like, well, how do you get them? Well, they care more about winning. You're a 4-win team. I'm a 16-win team. So yeah, they chose me over you because the money wasn't as important. The winning was. They want a ring. It's how Peter was able to do it as well. But generally speaking, I'm very conservative. I won't pay more than $8 million for a player on free agency. I don't care if they're Jesus reincarnated. Just not going to happen. But at the same time, I will offer a moderate salary of 3 to 6 million. And if you look at my existing team, I've done this fairly effectively without exploiting. If you look at Jason Bradley's probably a good example. So he's a pretty phenomenal wide receiver. He was my leading wide receiver this year. He didn't really care all that much about money. He cared about security and winning. I could offer him both of those things. I gave him a long-term contract. And when I offered him the contract, I offered him a 3 point. It wasn't a 3.2. He's actually in, it was a 4-year deal. The 1 year already happened. He's got his bonuses, but I gave him 5%. All they do is get 1 receiving touchdown, 1 catch, 1 or more games started, and then make the playoffs, and he could get that. He actually wanted 10 million, but I offered him 3 million, and I was able to get him because I layered in those bonuses. But really, the real reason why I was able to get him is because he cared more about winning and security than money. So I'm able to offer that. Now, I will offer some people 1 million and still be able to get them because of this. But you got to weigh that in. There's a certain point where too low is too low, and you may be able to adjust, whereas just right is just right. Jason Bradley, I think, actually signed the week I offered him the contract. And this was like 2 seasons ago. So you can use that effectively. So use the personal values to determine how you're going to offer them. Market size, there is a way to see that, especially on the web page. If you look at the teams, it will tell you the market size. So I think it's under team info, if I remember correctly, is where you can see that with your fan base, your fan approval, bandwagon, things like that. and that will help you be able to choose what is the right player to go after. If you don't have a lot of money, you're not going to go after someone who has money. If you don't have market size and they care about it, they're not going to sign with you unless you offer them a lot of money. Close to home's a little bit hard because I've never understood is it from or something else, because I don't think there's anything in here that actually tells you where they're close, where they're from. So Baylor, of course, is in Texas, so I'm not near Texas. But sorry, going back. Playing time, again, I mentioned that that is what you offer them as. Are you offering them as a starter or are you offering them as a key player? Do you have other players on the team that may keep this person from actually playing? Winning is not only last season, but how you've done over the historical terms. Loyalty is if you're cutting people or coaches a lot, you're showing yourself to be disloyal. Security is more about years on the contract. And again, it's kind of like loyalty. Does the person have the ability to stay on the team? Um, so there are some really good players in this year's free agency. I'm not going to list them ad nauseum. I could spend 30 minutes on that. But I'm going to list a couple and just show a couple real quick, probably one or two. There's a good class this year at quarterback. It's a slightly older class, but still really good. So if you're looking for a young quarterback, look at Quintana right here. Pierre Howell is one of those quarterbacks. If you need a veteran quarterback, he is a really good one. He is 33 years old, but he was a long-time Atlanta quarterback. He was successful at Atlanta, even on crappy teams. Daniel Willis is another guy I'll take a look at. James Martin played for the Cowboys last season. Really good quarterback. Thomas Allen is a good young quarterback. He did struggle with the New York Giants, but let's be honest, they were the New York Giants. The one season that they had a good season, he actually had a really good season. He threw for like 5,000 yards. So good young quarterback here. Anthony Farmer, I'm not high on. He throws a lot of picks. I think the CPU hates Farmer. Stewart may agree with me on that one. Uh, Running back, not the best of classes, but there's some good speed here. You got Libby, who was at Philadelphia. Bob DeLeon is one of the young running backs I'm high on. Him and Gary Mortensen are two people to take a look at. Gonzalo Perkins is another one to take a look at. But if you're looking for that really comprehensive running back like a Lackey, you might want to look at Perkins. But you've got some good options here. They're not spectacular options for free agency, and some of these guys really want money. Fullback, I would look at Kevin Martin. Pretty high on him. Joseph Reed is another guy. He's more of a running in a pass catching fullback, but Martin's more of a pure fullback. This is a loaded free agency at guard. You can find a lot of guards here, and there's some really, really good guards here. So like Isaiah Robinson is one, but got to talk about Gary Cummings. He was at the Jets last year, had a really good season with them. Christopher Stevens is a very good young guard. I would go after him if I wasn't already stacked at guard. Jamel Mills, another guy to take a look at. Um, if you're into run blockers, take a look at Joseph Barnes again. He's relatively young, so he's a very good one. So you can actually find yourself some really good guards this year. Cummings is probably one of the top ones coming out, along with Stevens. Stevens is someone that I'm pretty high on. He's not big on the money, but he is somewhat. But he was out of the Browns, so I've actually played against him. He's pretty good. Tackle, it's not a young free agency class for tackle, but there's some really good names in here. So you got Matthew Sheffield, who played for Chicago for a long time, doesn't like the money, but loves the winning. If I needed a tackle, I would go after him. Even at 32, he's still really good. Slagle is another guy to take a good, long, hard look at if you need a tackle. Maynard was at the Jets. Someone brought up the sack thing with Maynard. You know, the Jets throw the ball a shit ton. So 2 sacks, even 6 sacks in the Jets offense. I mean, look at that. That's 128 pancakes of 2 sacks. Give me a break. He's good. Now at 33, I'm probably not going after him because I think he's just going to start going down sometime soon. So, and that's my personal opinion, by the way. So, but he's still one of the top people in this area. Ishmael Christmas is another guy to look at. And then you got some really good young ones if you're willing to develop, which would be like James Sutherland is one of them. Andrew Beatty's another one that you might want to take a look at. I worry about those guys based on the speed, but again, Maynard is one of the top ones. At center, it's not particularly deep, but there are a couple good veteran centers you can get, like Philip Dyer, who's played at both Pittsburgh and Oakland. You got Jim Duncan, who is a pretty good center, could start day one on most teams. And then you got Jeffrey Jackson and Thomas Day, who are younger centers who, again, could start on most teams. Um, Tight end, this is not the class to get a tight end in from a free agency perspective. Barton is probably the best, and he played for the Jets last year. Had a hard time getting on the field, but Harry Harmon and Tommy Tellez would be two other people to look at. Wide receiver, I think this particular depth here this year, which is good to see. You got Cochran with 92 speed. He's 31, so that speed's going to drop off. Sullivan, I mentioned him, is just a really good wide receiver to keep an eye on. Childs has had a great career. I think he was with Kansas City. So Kansas City actually has like two different wide receivers in here. Baker's a very good young talent, as is Hart. I think Hart was the other one from Kansas City. I'd keep an eye on him. And then if you're looking for agility, you've got some good options here as well with people like Collado, Frazier, and so on. So just a really good class. Thomas Cleary was at Pittsburgh. I used him mostly as a tight end, but he's a 6'6", 216 with 76 speed. I used him mostly as tight end, but in the slot he could actually be decent. And then you have some people on the lower end of their career. Defensive tackle, not the best of classes, but there's some good ones here. Gregory, Mahoney are two ones that stand out. If you're looking for speed at defensive tackle, look at McCrary. Petit is another good one. They both have had decent careers, although they're on the back end of their career now. Defensive end probably has the most exciting player of them all, which is James Lamb. There will be a sweepstakes for him because he's been a long time 49er and finally was let go. He's a speed rusher. His stats don't show actually how good he is. He is someone who I have went back and forth about trying to make a run at him. I think the bidding war on him is going to be somewhat obscene. I think a lot of people going after him. Bittner's another guy to keep an eye on. Reyes, he's a longtime Raider. Definitely would look at him. Yeah, he's 35, but he's been producing year over year. Guerrero's another guy to take a look at. So there's a lot of good skill here. It's on the older end of the scale, not the younger end. But at the same time, I say that is you got people like George Wood, who not the best of stats, but he could be a good speed rusher. You got Levine, again, a good speed rusher, but against stronger people, they're going to struggle a little bit. Linebacker wise, not the deepest of class, but there are some good linebackers in here. You got people like Wilkins. York is a longtime Steeler who just saw his role diminish because Pittsburgh got faster in different areas. Croft is another guy that pretty high on. He's a longtime Raven. Andrew New is an intriguing younger linebacker who I would take a good hard look at. He's out of Dallas. You got Huddleston as well, who's another decent linebacker. So you got some good options there. It's just not as deep as some previous years. Cornerback, the lottery here is going to be Denning. You don't find many quarterbacks, especially at the age of 28, that have 95 speed. A lot of people are going to go after him. Pate's going to be up there as well. And then you have people like Cosgrove and Carr, who are also good cornerbacks to keep an eye on. Free safety, there's a lot of good options here as well. You got Moulton. You don't find many, if any, free safeties that have 92 speed that are out on free agency. Morin's another guy to keep an eye on. Reyna as well. Daly's also good. So you have some pretty good young options here. The computer's high on Daly because he has 88 overall, but Morin and Moulton are pretty good options as well. Strong safety I would avoid. somewhat. Olstein is probably the best, along with McDougal. Um, and if I remember correctly, both of these guys care a lot about money, so they're gonna milk you for everything they can. I'm not gonna talk about kickers. So that's kind of the preview of free agency. Again, if you nail it in free agency, you could go from a 4 or 5 win to a playoff team. If you nail it in free agency, you can go from 9 wins and just barely make it into the playoffs to making a title run. And then for teams like Oakland, Pittsburgh, New York, New England, Carolina, who are the established teams, Dallas, uh, they will use free agency to keep themselves there. This year, Pittsburgh probably won't play much in free agency because, again, they're returning a lot of their roster. I may look forward to next year just to see who's retiring or edging closer to retiring. So, like, people are like, why would you go after Lamb? Well, Hickson's getting up there in age, and I may need to replace him, and Lamb is younger than Hickson. So ultimately, I might bring him in and then use Perry more in the slot, but I have a really good young rookie who will be entering his second season. That likely is why I won't go after Lamb, but someone like a Sullivan at wide receiver, I will go after. The other thing with contracts is just make sure you know what you're offering. Don't over offer people who don't really care about money, who care more about security or winning or playing time. If you're doing playing time, make sure you're offering the right contract that's a starter or a key player instead of a rotational player. Also, look at your roster and make sure you don't have a ton of people that potentially are going to start over them. And the biggest thing with the contracts is you can effectively use bonuses to mitigate not paying as much in base salary. So if you offer someone 10 million and you know like Peter's offering them 15, this is probably a bad example because I don't think he does that very often. But what you can do is look at bonuses to offer them like 10 million and then layer enough bonuses that you get close to 15 or exceed 15. And also know that they may not hit those bonuses, so you're getting them for 10 instead of 15. Uh, Avoid the trap of the exploit. Don't do it. I won't bring that up again. And then again, there's some really good veteran quarterbacks in this class. Guard is particularly deep. Tackle is deep. You've got some really good wide receivers. You have a phenomenal defensive end in Lamb, who's actually available. Linebacker's got some depth to it. Cornerback has Denning, who is just a speedster, and then you got good depth at free safety. So it'll be an interesting free agency period for us. So if you like this video, let me know. If you want to join, it's a perfect time to join. We're just now beginning free agency. The next sim will run on Tuesday. The draft class will likely be available later this week. For those of you who are thinking about the draft and who I should go after in free agency, I will say that there are generational quarterbacks coming out in this draft. There's specifically one that I think no matter what the Northford does to him is likely going to be a generational quarterback, and that's Marcus Witten out of Maryland. There are some really good wide receivers in this year's draft. There are also some good cornerbacks. Linebacker and defensive line, I think, is pretty solid. Maybe not as good as last year. The offensive line is always solid. Maybe not as good as it was last year, but running back is probably going to be down this year. Safety is probably down this year. But again, I haven't seen the class. I've only seen the aggregate of the college class, and I know who came out from college. So there were some pretty big names coming out from college. So at each position, you should be able to find a few people that are really decent. So just keep that in the back of your mind as you move through free agency. Is the draft is a great way to pick people up unless you're DP and you have no draft picks because you gave them all up last year for a running back who actually did very well, by the way. So in his case, he's going to get everything he needs through free agency or try to move into the draft. I will say the top 5 picks are all CPU. So if you want to join this league, you got a good chance of landing yourself the Marcus Witten sweepstakes or some of the other names that you're going to hear emerge. And I will do videos on those. So take a look at that. If you're looking at trading, just bear in mind that the calculator's in Slack. You're going to give up in an arm and a leg if you're going after that first round pick. I think, if I remember correctly, either Atlanta or Tampa Bay have it. So that's it for now. Hopefully you like this. Talk to you soon.